Hello there and thank you for watching. In my community tab I asked the question in what topics you are interested and the votes were 50-50 between the topics how to care for domestic beetles and how to beetle clean skeletons. So I will try to explain all that's important of both topics in 2 different videos, starting with the basics of how to care for domestic beetles. Domestic beetles are really easy to breed and I would even recommend them to the beginning beetle breeders. These beetles are pretty sturdy and the females can lay lots of eggs. Let's create a basic enclosure for domestic beetles from scratch. The enclosure itself needs to be a material that the beetles can't escape by destroying it or by simply climbing out of it. Smooth plastic boxes, a glass terrarium or even modified metal freezers will do. When you make your own beetle box, be sure that the air can ventilate. A lid with fly screen prevents the buildup of harmful gases such as ammonia. For this example, I take a store-bought plastic enclosure. These are a good size for starting colonies. Wood shavings are most widely used as ground cover. Try to avoid cedar since that's a natural bug deterrent. Wood chips from pine or aspen are safe options. I personally prefer hemp fibers, since these are free of dust and reduce scents. For a species to survive, an animal must eat, drink and create offspring. So let's start with the first topic, food. Domestic beetles are scavengers and nature's cleanup crew. They eat animal waste, such as carcasses or sheds. The adults and the larvae have the same diet, so you can keep all life stages together in the same enclosure without difficulties. These beetles can also eat other animal products, such as cheese, boiled egg or kibble meant for cats and dogs. So when you're short on food, you can always consider giving them the leftovers of your dinner or simply buy food meant for dogs and cats. A little side note is that almost all kibble contain grains. Not all domestic species can eat plant materials, so kibble isn't a sustainable long-term diet for every species. I have used feeding trays made of cardboard for a long time in the beginning, but currently I use plastic feeding trays. These are easier to clean and can be reused for a long time. Eventually, cardboard can become nasty and smelly after a few uses. I use open feeding trays for bigger stuff like skulls or simply a chunk of meat, and I use closed feeding trays for skeletons in case I really must not lose any bones in the bedding. Your beetles aren't going to survive if you only feed them dry food without ever giving them a drink. So the next topic is water. Your beetles can get some moisture out of their food, for example if you feed them fresh meat. You can additionally spray water on the sides of the enclosure or place a wet paper ball on a water tray. Try to prevent the bedding from becoming moist, since mites will flourish in a moist environment. Next to talk about is offspring. Eggs are laid in small safe spaces near the food source, for example between the layers of cardboard, but it can be in between crests and in dents of any material. After a few days, a very small beetle larva will hatch. This larva will grow and shed a few times. Every time the larva sheds, the larva will emerge almost white in color. They darken over time. Once the larva is fully grown, you might see them wandering around an enclosure in search for a good spot to pupate. They like to bore themselves into a material, such as styrofoam or wood, for this purpose. When the material is falling apart due to the number of holes, simply provide them with a new piece. The larva may appear quite stiff and motionless before it sheds its larval skin one last time to become a pupa. The pupa will also darken somewhat over time and the pupa can move when bothered. Once the adults emerge from the pupae, they will be very light in color. They are very vulnerable and squishy during this time, so you don't often see them like this since they tend to hide until they are hardened and darkened in color. The general rule for all species of domestics is the warmer the temperature, the quicker the eggs hatch, the quicker the larvae develop and the quicker the pupae develop. Keeping the beetle colony at a warm temperature is recommended to increase its population size quick. Despite this, you do not want to keep your beetle colony in temperatures that are too hot. At certain temperatures, the adult beetles gain the ability to fly and the adult females might stop producing eggs. The threshold temperature differs per species. Temperatures below freezing point will kill domestic beetles, since they do not go dormant like some other beetle species. The relative humidity can be a tricky aspect. Domestic beetles can live in very arid environments. I even encountered them in the desert of the Western Sahara. Domestic beetles can survive with a relative humidity lower than 50%, while mites don't. So that's a great way to get rid of mites. However, if you want to stimulate your beetles into laying eggs, you would need to increase the relative humidity. They really thrive between 60 to 70%. So now you've heard all the basics on how to care for domestic beetles. You may breed them in purely functional enclosures or in more natural habitats. You may keep them as the main subject or as a cleaner crew in terraria housing reptiles or enclosures of other insects such as isopods and roaches. Whatever you do, with the right care, these beetles will thrive. To successfully use these beetles to clean skeletons can be a different story. That will be the subject for part 2. Please share your experience with keeping domestic beetles in the comments, and if you still have any questions about rearing them, ask away. I will try my best to answer them all. Thank you for watching. Bye!